Good morning, everyone. Good morning, good morning. I'm gonna go ahead and get started. I know we have one more minute, but we'll just let everyone else kind of come in as they can. But this is a good little group, so if you guys have any questions, just feel free to let me know throughout the presentation and I'll go ahead and get started. So my name is Shauna Reed. I'm the Bureau Chief of Technology Planning and Management at the Florida Department of Education. And I also help with the daily support of the Florida School Safety Portal as well as the social media monitoring tool. So let me go ahead and get this started. Show of hands, how many of you all are familiar with the Florida School Safety Portal as well as the social media monitoring tool? Okay, good. So there's a good group of you guys. All right, so today I'm going to talk you through both of those tools and then get you up to speed on where we are as of today. Okay, so feel free to ask me any questions that you have. So I'll start off first with an introduction on why we're utilizing these two tools, and then we'll go into some information about each one, and then I'll give you some statistics on where we are as of today. So first and foremost, let's talk about the Florida statute that basically says that we would like to have these tools available so school districts can have this information at their hands if needed. So we have Florida statute 1001.212. And essentially what that Florida statute basically indicates is that we are to work with the Department of Law Enforcement to provide a centralized integrated data repository and a data analytics resource. Okay, so that is why we have these two tools, and it's for that purpose. We would like to improve access to timely, complete, and accurate information. And we are to work and provide you all with the data from social media monitoring, and I'll talk to you guys about how we compile that data and how that works. And it's supposed to also include the information from the Department of Children and Families and also from law enforcement. Okay, so I'll tell you how we pull all of those data points together to provide you all with that information. And lastly, the primary point and focus of these tools is to make sure that threat assessment teams have this information available if they have someone locally that they deem to be a threat to themselves or to others. This is just extra pieces of information to help you all make determinations locally. So let's first start off with the social media monitoring tool. There are a number of key points that I should highlight with the social media monitoring tool. So we'll run through each one of these items and then I'll talk to you all about them in more detail. So the first one being that we do real-time monitoring. So this tool is monitoring 24/7, 365, okay? It utilizes keyword searching. Keyword searching is the core of how the social media monitoring tool works. It's keywords as well as you'll see a little bit later geofencing. We utilize both of those in combination to help you all with alerts locally, okay? We also have dashboard monitoring that's available through the tool. If districts would like to go and look through the tool and look at some of the things, the mentions that we find on social media, you can look at those through this dashboard. There are also notifications that are provided to both the districts and the state, okay? And we'll talk about those notifications in just a little bit. One of the great points, what the vendor does is they make sure that they adjust for growth. They're constantly reevaluating what they see, what districts tell them about the tool, and they're constantly adjusting it to make sure they're capturing what's appropriate for the districts. We also monitor a large number of sites. There are millions of sites, so I can't tell you specifically which ones, but they're public sites that are available for us to review. So there are a large number of sites that are monitored. We also monitor in multiple languages, okay? Also, we have a secure system. So all of this information is available to the districts. All of this information is secure and only accessible by the districts, the contacts designated within the districts, I should say. And what this tool does is it goes out based on the parameters of the tool and it compiles the information and makes it available for the districts. So far, so good. Any questions? So here's a breakdown of some of the features as well as an example of some of the sites that the tool monitors. And so again, it does do real-time monitoring, like I explained previously, 24/7, 365. Of course, there are times where we have maintenance, patching, but outside of that, the system is constantly up and you have the ability to search alerts throughout the year, or search content, I should say. Again, it's a big part of this process is keyword searches and geolocation. So you'll hear me say that quite a bit when it comes to social media monitoring tool because it leverages both as part of its processes. And so it lists out a couple of the main sites that you all are familiar with. Those are some of the sites that it monitors, but it monitors quite a bit. Not only social media sites, but forums, customer reviews, anything that's publicly available on the web, it is searching. So let me give you all a glimpse into how it works. So there's keywords and then there's geolocation. So like I expressed to you before, the keywords and the geolocations are core to how this tool works. And so I'll tell you all a little bit about the keywords. So we have 5 categories of keywords. You can see them on the screen: gun, bomb, bullying, mental health, and general. There's a number of terms associated with each one of those categories, okay? So the vendor provided a library of terms associated with each of these categories, and then they gave the DOE an opportunity to add additional terms that may not have been captured in their library. And then when they work with the districts, they also give you all the opportunity to add keywords. Because of course, depending on what part of Florida you're in, maybe you will call a gun something different, or there might be other phrases that you might associate with guns. So we give you an opportunity to include that as part of the tool. So that we make sure it's region-based. And if there's something that's specific to the north or to the south, you all can include those keywords and make sure that it's specific to your district. Okay, so we have that library of terms that we go out and look for. But of course, if we just go out there and look for a gun, there's millions of things on the internet that speaks to guns. You might see it in a song lyric, so we have to limit it in some way. So what the vendor does is they work with the district to also include limiting keywords. So it would be maybe your school name, a teacher's name, something to associate it with your school. So the keywords alone would be too vast. We would pull in way too much chatter, too much information, because you'll see those terms everywhere you look on the internet. So we also pull in these limiting keywords. They'll work with the district to determine what additional terms you would like to include, what other information would make it a little bit more specific to your district or your school. So the vendor is very flexible. They'll include whatever you would need in that tool. They tailor fit the queries that they use for the tool as well. So they're open to customizing it to whatever your needs are locally. Okay, so we've talked about the keywords. So geolocation, how does that play a role? So the geolocation is essentially also looking at those keywords, and maybe we're not limiting it because of the district or the school name. We're limiting it based on the location. So if we have someone who says any of the keywords that are listed within that library of terms within the location of your schools, that is also flagged, or your district. So we've pre-populated it with the latitude and longitude of every single district and school within the state. So we have the geofencing, and if we see the keywords brought up in some form or fashion on the internet in association with that location, we will also be flagging that as well as part of this tool. So like I said, it utilizes a combination of the two. It's not just one or the other, it's one and the other. And it just depends on, what exactly we find as far as the content is concerned. Each one of these items will pick it up and it will flag it as an alert potentially. Any questions? Yes, so the district designates whoever they would like to get notifications locally, and I'll talk a little bit about that. Okay, this is being recorded, so I'll reiterate the question. So he asked us, does the school safety specialist locally also get a notification? And it just depends on who you provide as your contact locally. You all can select whoever you would like to receive notifications at the district level or at the school level. Okay, any additional questions on that so far? So I'm going to break down a little bit of how it works. So this one is going to show you how the keywords, the locations, and then we also have something called identity. I'm going to walk you through each one. So keywords, again, like I mentioned to you before, it's going to be searching based on those keywords in that library of terms, whether it's from the DOE, the vendor, or the district or the school. It's going to search for those keywords and associate it with a school or district limiting keywords. So let's look at this example. I'm going to hurt someone at Westfield High. It's using the school, so it's limiting it so that we know it's specifically talking about a specific school, and hurt might show up in one of those keywords. So it uses the association between those keywords and the limiting keywords for your school, your district, and then flag someone. So that is an example of what we would capture. Okay. If someone just says, I want to hurt someone, that won't be captured. There's no association with your school or your district. There's no way for us to know whether that's specific to anyone related to your district or school. Any questions on that first one? So for the second one, it will capture if those keywords are mentioned within a specific geofence. So that will be captured. But if you're at home on your couch saying, I hate everyone at a specific school, or I want to harm someone at a specific school, it may not necessarily be captured unless it's utilizing those keywords and it's associated with your district and school. But if it's outside of our geofence, we won't capture it. Any questions? Okay, so for the third item, let's just say, for example, someone says one of those keywords on the perimeter of a school. We will now be monitoring their chatter. If there's any other threats, once they moved away from the school, we would still be monitoring that. Once they're flagged because they're close to the school mentioning something that's deemed a threat, we will capture any other subsequent threats if they make it, because now we have flagged their identity. Okay, so this is how the tool works, and that is the core of how it monitors. Notifications. So like I was just asked, there are district contacts who are designated who will receive notifications. And I'll speak to this a little bit, because when this first started, we had everyone wanting to be a part of it. They all wanted to get alerts until the alerts came in. So there was a large number of alerts that came in. Like I said, it's giving you the information based on keywords. There's not a science to it. It's basically doing it based on the parameters of the query. So it might find a little bit more. It may not be deemed a legitimate threat. So what the department did was they teamed up with the vendor so that they could provide us with resources who would be able to review those alerts as well to assist the district. So if you get 1,800 alerts, the vendor is also reviewing and providing you the ones that they deem to be critical or urgent. And then you still have the ability to review everything else, but they're surfacing the ones that seem to be the highest priority. Okay, so you still have access to everything. You're just getting a little bit of assistance from the vendor to help you to identify the ones that would potentially need to be escalated immediately. Okay, so that is something new. We did that within the last year because of the feedback we were receiving from the districts on the large amount of notifications they were getting. The state also receives these notifications. If there are any social media alerts that come up, it comes to the state, and we also make that available within the Florida School Safety Portal. Okay, so there's district notifications that go out to you guys locally, and then the state also receives state notifications that we utilize within the Florida School Safety Portal. I'm not sure if you guys can see that very clearly, but here's a distribution of the districts who are actively participating in the social media monitoring tool to date. Okay, so as you can see, it's not all of the districts. This is an optional tool. I think it would be useful if those of you who have access to this tool to go ahead and to utilize it. It's one extra tool available to the state, and it provides extra information to threat assessment team members if needed. Okay, so I don't want you all to be alarmed. There are 18,000 alerts across the state, but like I said, these are just flagging things for the district to review. It doesn't mean that all of them are, oh my gosh, we need to go, they're all being flagged to assist the districts. So don't think that there's 18,000 threats in Florida right now that, we're high level that we need to be concerned about. These were these are the alerts that were generated based on those keywords and based on that geolocation. It then takes someone locally to take a look at the mention, the social media monitor mention, to determine, is this something that is potentially a problem or a threat locally? Okay, so this is the distribution. And as you can see, the bulk of them were gun, aside from general violence. Any questions?
Are there limits on the keywords that can be added to the file?
No, they will allow you to add up to as many keywords as you would like. Any additional questions? Okay, so this slide is talking about what I just mentioned. We did have the vendor pick up 2 additional resources to help us with the review of the alerts. And so that's what this particular slide is showing, is that they then do this process where they review the actual mentions, the social media monitoring mentions, And they have a process where they basically escalate it depending on the tier of or what they consider critical or urgent. Right now, they have gun, bomb, and general violence flagged as tier 1, which is critical. And they have bullying and mental health as tier 2, which is considered urgent. They basically notify the districts if they see any alerts or mentions that fall into those categories, and they try to get someone immediately on top of that alert. And so that is a new feature again. Any questions on social media monitoring tool before I move on to the Florida School Safety Portal? Okay, so the Florida School Safety Portal was a recommendation of the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas Commission. And the purpose of the Florida School Safety Portal was to provide local threat assessment team members with information on hand. If there was some sort of incident locally, or if someone was deemed a threat to themselves or to others, it would allow them and all of the different threat assessment team members an opportunity to review information available for the student. And so we'll talk about that in just a little bit. For those of you who are not familiar, threat assessment team members consist of an education team member, a mental health team member, a law enforcement team member. So there are multiple team members that are a part of the threat assessment team. And so the purpose of this tool is to help them work together to facilitate and utilize this information for whatever their needs are per their threat assessment plan. So what is the purpose of the Florida School Safety Portal? I kind of just basically gave you a high level overview, but it's to promote school safety. And it's supposed to help with the coordination between different entities. We usually, see people go to law enforcement or go to the mental health point of contact. But this is supposed to help them come together, to work together, to look at the information that's available, to make a determination locally. Okay, so if you are an authorized user of the Florida School Safety Portal, you have access to education data, which is SESR. It's the School Environmental Safety Incident Reporting data. I am the person who refreshes that data for the portal. There's also Fortify Florida information available for suspicious activity reporting. It includes the social media monitoring data that I just mentioned to you guys. The statewide notifications that we receive become a part of this portal as a data point. We receive information from the Florida Department of Children and Families for Baker Act. We have Baker Act data available in the system as well. And lastly, the Florida Department of Law Enforcement. They provide us with links, and you have to be a law enforcement officer to be able to access those links. So even though it's available within the site, only law enforcement can get to this information. So those are our data sources. Any questions on the data sources? Okay, so far so good. All right, so here's just a visual representation of those sources. And so as you can see, we have the educational information. We have the Fortify Florida suspicious activity reporting, as I mentioned, as well as the social media monitoring data, the DCF Baker Act information, and the law enforcement information. So one thing I do want to mention is that this system doesn't sit on all this data. It's not compiled in one central database. What we actually have is a window into each one of these data sets. It's a little bit safer. We're not housing all of these students' information in one place. We're actually looking at their data from each of these particular data sources. It gives us a window temporarily to be able to pull it in for our need, and then they can go back and reside in this original source. That is really great because each one of these data sources can protect the data in whatever form or fashion that is appropriate for that data. And so that is how we utilize this system. We have windows into these data points. It's not actually being fed from these the data sets. Does anyone have any questions on that one? I know I get questions on that quite often, but hopefully you guys feel good about that one. Okay. So just a couple of quick bullets. So the Florida School Safety Portal provides real-time access to information. Of course, SESR, right now is not refreshed frequently. It's based on the survey, which we are planning on increasing to monthly. So when we get those monthly data sets, it will be available within the Florida School Safety Portal. I know Steve and Andre talked about that yesterday, and that's where the information will be utilized within the portal. Okay. Only users that are authorized to access criminal justice information will be able to get to that. And that's what I just basically mentioned. We'll have links, but if you're not a law enforcement officer, you can't get to them. We only temporarily display the information when you search in the portal, and I'll show you guys some screens so you get an idea of what the portal looks like. But when you search in the portal, it will only be temporarily available, that information. We're trying to avoid people searching, stepping away, leaving the information on the screen. The type of information that we are looking at is not information that should be shared, or someone walking by can just glimpse at it. So what happens is it makes it available, and then after 30 minutes, the screen will expire and it will log you out. Okay, that's a security mechanism. Authorized users will not be able to download or store information. It's solely for your ability to review and discuss with your threat assessment teams. The access is governed by applicable state and federal laws. Of course, we are working with DCF information, Baker Act information, educational information, law enforcement data. All of those laws, federal and state, are still in place, even with this portal. And the threat assessment team must undergo a number of steps to get access into the system. So that's where my team and we really are the source that helps with the support of that application, getting you access into that application. That is the role of my team. So let me just run you through what we ask. Oh, sorry, go ahead. No, none of this information can be extrapolated from the system. It's all for viewing purposes only. And her question was, can they print? And I said, no, we cannot print, cannot download. The purpose of this system is just for you all to be able to view and discuss as threat assessment team members. Any additional questions? Okay. So let's talk through the authorization process. This is where people get really tripped up, but it's a really straightforward process. Once you understand the pieces and then what we need, it goes really smoothly, but I've had districts have a lot of trouble with this authorization process. So I figure I'd walk through it and get you guys up to speed on how it works. So if you all have any interaction with the people who will be doing this process, or if it will be you have some context on how to get access to the application, okay? So first, we require a district agreement. The superintendent must sign an agreement saying, yes, I would like my district to participate in the Florida School Safety Portal, okay? So the superintendent is required to submit a district agreement, okay? Next, we have an individual agreement. The threat assessment team member themselves must complete this form, this agreement. That is the user of the system, okay? So that's the second level of agreements that we have. One for the superintendent, one for the threat assessment team member. The next item is security awareness training. Every single user of this application, this system, must take the security awareness training that the DOE offers. Every year, it's an annual training and it has to be renewed or you will lose your access to the system. And then lastly, whoever your local single sign-on administrator is must give you the roles in the application. So on the individual form, we ask you, what is the role that you would have when you access the system? Are you going to be an education user? Are you going to be a law enforcement user, mental health user? If you indicate you're a mental health user, your single sign-on role should indicate that you're a mental health user. If those don't align, we cannot allow you access into the application. Okay. Any questions? So the agents review access to this portal daily. Twice a day, we're reviewing to see if anyone has submitted a request. We do have to do reviews of the agreements to make sure they meet the standard before we can approve the usage into the system or the access into the system. And so we have agents looking at this twice a day. We ask that the users complete all of the forms in their entirety or it will be denied, okay? I personally am the denier. If their forms are not completed, denied. And so that comes up quite a bit. Agreement changes must be reviewed and approved by general counsel. We have had some districts that said, hey, we want to tweak this particular verbiage in the agreement. That's fine. It has to go through our general counsel. And once it's approved, we can go ahead and return it back to you guys as an approved agreement. Okay. And then we have some of the roles which are district administrators. District administrators can assist with this process. They can upload those forms. They can help with the approval process, but they will not have access into the system. So each district, I've had districts, larger districts, designate an administrator locally that can help people upload forms and help with the approval process, but don't necessarily need access to the application. Any questions? So this is just a visual representation of what I just mentioned, the different levels of approval needed to get into the application. So the first being those agreements that I mentioned, the online training, and then lastly, the access to the portal. So we have the two agreements, the district agreement and the individual agreement. I'm just reiterating, so we're all on the same page. Superintendent needs to do the district agreement, the threat assessment team member needs to do the individual agreement, and then we have the training and then the roles. I know it sounds like a lot, but it really isn't. It's pretty straightforward. We've had large districts with hundreds of members get this done pretty quickly once they understood what the process entailed. Okay. Here's just an overview of the authorizations as of maybe 2 weeks ago. Yes. Great question. So the question was, how long does it take for us to approve the access? We have reviewers looking at this twice daily. So if everything is where we need it to be, it would be within the day. I would say no more than 2 days. But we do have a lot of people who do not fill out the forms completely. We have a lot of people who don't have the roles. We have people that don't have the training completed. So I can't make any promises for those scenarios, but if everything is where it needs to be, it's usually a day or 2. Right. Yes. So the question was for the larger districts, how do we know who our users are? We have people who have designees within the district, so they'll contact us and say, I'm the school safety specialist for so-and-so district. Is there any way for me to find out how many users we have? Absolutely, that's something we can provide. Our email address is flsafetyportal@fldoe.org. I'll say it again, flsafetyportal@fldoe.org. If you reach out to that mailbox, someone will be able to assist you with that information. Say that one more time. Can you pass the mic to her really quick? I'm sorry.
Is that the same email address with the user agreements to?
Oh, good question. So we don't accept the user agreements via email. They have to be uploaded. There's an authorization process where you have to upload the form. So once you reach out to us, if you need to reach out to us for any reason, you can email us to ask us the process. We'll send you over something to tell you these are the steps. But we ask that you upload the agreements via single sign-on. There's a single sign-on portal when you have access to the FSSP, and it'll allow you to upload your agreements. Yes.
You mentioned that training needs to be done annually. Does also the agreement need to be done annually?
Oh, great question. So the training, security awareness training does need to be done annually, and so does the district agreement, and that's the superintendent's responsibility.
But the individual users will stay in the.
They would stay approved. Yep, as long as they take the training each year, they stay approved.
And one more, can you assign multiple roles within the FSS?
Yes, you can. It should align with your threat assessment, your role on the threat assessment team. Yes.
And this might not be the appropriate question. So please
Okay.
feel free to say it's not, but we are understanding that some of our contiguous counties, law enforcement is using some of this information for what's called intelligence and policy.
Okay.
Is what kind of agreement do law enforcement have as to how they can use this data? Is that written into their contract?
So there are agreements with each one of these entities, but for law enforcement, they have access to tools that they already have access to now. It's just a centralized way of getting all the threat assessment team members to be able to collaborate. So the law enforcement officers will only have access to things they already have access to through this. So they wouldn't be getting information from some other data source and disseminating it or using it for intelligence purposes. This is solely they have access to links that they currently have access to, but it's more so to help them facilitate that communication as threat assessment team members if something occurs together. So many of the law enforcement say, we have access to this. And so yes, FDLE wanted for you all to have access together when you all come to do a threat assessment plan. You all can all sit together and you all have access to these individual pieces in a centralized location. So they wouldn't be accessing anything that they don't currently have access to. Any other questions? Great questions, guys. So right now, as you can see, the bulk of our users are approved. We do have some denials. We work with those denials regularly. And then the remainder of them are new users and those that are pending approvals. So that is the distribution as of maybe 2 weeks ago. The reason for denial will be that they didn't take the training that's required for them to get access to the system. Another reason would be that their forms aren't filled out 100%. We're missing a lot of signatures. It could be any number of reasons. If they don't meet all 4 of those requirements, they will get a denial. And just, this is a breakdown by district. You might not be able to see it too clearly, but if you have a copy of the presentation, it'll give you a breakdown of the numbers of how many are new users, how many are pending access. And we have that broken down by each district that's participating. Again, just like social media monitoring tool, the Florida School Safety Portal is an optional tool. We suggest that people use it locally, but it is optional, it's not required. We wanted to provide a quick high-level overview of the districts that aren't participating in the event that you are one of those districts and you would like to participate. So we are giving you the distribution so that you could take a quick look. If you're in one of those districts and you think you're interested, feel free to participate. Now let's take a quick look at the application or the system. I'll show you guys a couple of the screens. This system is really straightforward. I know people want to get in, they want to see it. What does it look like? What does it do? And they get in, they're like, oh, okay. So it's really straightforward. So first we start off with a disclaimer. The disclaimer basically talks to you all about what your expectations are within the system. You cannot move past this page until you scroll through the entire disclaimer, okay? This is a glimpse of the search screen. This is the primary functionality of the FSSP. You have the search screen, which allows you to enter a student's name, first and last, their date of birth, any identifiers that you might have, and then it will provide you with some sort of matching. It'll show like a pop-up to say how many matches it found from each one of these data sources. Depending on what you have access to, that's what results you would get back. So if you're an education user and you only have access to educational information, the search results will only pull back educational information. If you're an education and mental health user, then if you do a search, it'll pull back education information as well as mental health information from BCF, I'm sorry.
So is that access determined at the level or is it?
The question was, is the access determined by the SSO level or is it determined by me? It's determined by your local SSO agent, and it should align with your role on the threat assessment team.
So then theoretically, talking about law enforcement, other information, they could have.
Correct. So we have approval, supervisor approval. So if they sign the form and they decide to use it for something else that is outside of the authorization of what they're supposed to be doing in the system. Any questions? So this is literally the search screen. You can see the data connections on the side. It shows you have a connection to assessor data, to the Baker Act information, and to Fortify Florida. So you can see your connections on the side depending on your user access. This is literally what the screen looks like. This is the bulk of the functionality within the Florida School Safety Portal. You put in the name, you put in the date of birth, the identifiers, and it'll tell you whether it has some pieces of information available for you. That is essentially the bulk of the system. On the side, it gives you some keywords. It shows you whether it found that person associated with an alert potentially. So if you see on the side, there's like a little red box. It's basically saying maybe we found the student, but we found them associated with a gun, and we found them in the Fortify Florida data set. It gives you some pointers to help you to see where the student's information was found and what was found for that student. Any questions on this screen? This is an example of the search results. So as you can see, when I went in as this user, I had all the roles. And when I searched for that person, I found education information from Cessor, and I also found Fortify Florida information. And I think I see a result from social media monitoring. Those colors let you know the confidence of that match. Okay, so if you see an orange match, that means it's a higher score. We found it at a tighter, we found most of the elements. We found that name, we found that ID, it looks like that person. So that's the match in confidence. If you see a match, but you don't see it highlighted in a color, it means we found some nuggets or pieces of that information. It's just not overwhelmingly seeming to be that person. So they're saying that they found someone that's a candidate that might meet your criteria, but we're not 100% sure if it's that person. So those colors kind of indicate the confidence level of that match. Okay, so that's what the screen looks like. It basically provides you with the information from each data set. And then law enforcement. So for law enforcement, there's not a search. We're not searching law enforcement data. We're not allowing people to search law enforcement data. We're giving them the links to be able to log into one of these existing law enforcement sites to then begin your search. Okay, so not anyone can just log in and start searching the law enforcement databases. It's not happening. You have to have access to that information. Cybersecurity. So there are safeguards in place for all of this information. That's why we have those layers of approvals to get into the application. That's why we implement things like only having the data available for 30 minutes. We want to make sure that the system is really secure because of the type of information that is housed within this system. Not necessarily housed, but that you have the ability to review through this application. So every effort has been made to put preventative measures in place to ensure that the data is protected. Again, it's role-based authentication. So depending on your role, that dictates what you can see. And your role should align with your role in the threat assessment team. And lastly, it was a really big thing for the data sources to include that disclaimer so that everyone is aware on entry into the system what your responsibility is as someone accessing student information. And that covers it. That is the social media monitoring tool and the Florida School Safety Portal. Does anyone have any additional questions?
Is there a plan in place to include the actual threat assessments themselves to be uploaded in the FSSPs to take the access to?
I know there's been conversation about that. And I know the Office of Safe Schools has been talking through some things that they may want to do to this system. And I'm not 100% sure if that's one of the ones that they will implement, but there has been conversation around it. And I know that has come up.
So what happens if you have partners who refuse to sign this? Question. Second, a lot of them are not willing to share criminal information with us. We have to have some sort of level of security. So what do we do with that aspect when we don't necessarily follow their arrangement?
So if they don't want to participate, then they won't be, participating in the system, but they do still have access to all of this information. So the FSSP is not the only place that they'll be able to access it. So even if they don't decide they want to participate in the Florida School Safety Portal, they'll still have access to those links. And for the second part of your question, it was that you guys don't govern the bill. You don't have the ability to govern whether they can participate or not. Right. And that has come up also quite a bit. And so what we say is we defer to those local threat assessment teams to determine how they would like to handle that. It's really all specific to the district. We don't have any guidance on how to, handle the release of information. So that's all I can really speak to on that one. Any other questions? All right, thank you guys.
Just a little bit.
What do we have, 30 minutes left?
No, it ends at 10:15, so we only
Oh,
had about 7.
10:15.
Yeah, yeah. The next one starts at 10:30. I heard about one finishing at.
Yeah, what is that person?